everyone, and thank you for joining me today on One More Rep. Now, today I want to cover down what is one more rep? What's the intent and where are we going with it? It seems to be a question that I had a lot. And then I also am going to use this episode to address the number one question I've had over the last 4 or 5 weeks since I initially posted my home gym. And that is an interview with one of the innovators of one of the best pieces of equipment, gym equipment, that I have gotten in a very long time. So first, let's talk about one more rep. Initially, one more rep was just going to be that. It was one more thing we were doing when we had the interview with the men down under. Well, that led to me recording the women down under, which will start being featured next week. That also led to people asking me, are you going to do another one more rep? What's its intent? So it started off as just something we were going to be a one and done with. And now it seems like there are a lot of people that would like a little more commentary, a little bit more natural edge type stuff. So the team and I decided that we're going to use one more rep for infrequent drops on topics or subjects that just don't fit into our regular format. Now, the format Natural Edge does have 4 segments. Those 4 segments are subject to change. We're going to keep mixing things up and changing it around. Right now, it seems to be working, but we could change it in a year or a month just to try to make it better. Again, based on you, our viewers' suggestions. So for now, we're just going to use one more rep for infrequent, just like you don't do one more rep every set that you do an exercise with. You use it sporadically as a way to increase intensity and muscle growth. So we're going to use one more rep in kind of the same way. So when we have something that we want to cover or say, one more rep is going to be one host, either myself or one of my 2 co-hosts, presenting a single topic for about a 15 or 20-minute segment that wouldn't normally fit into one of our drop features, or perhaps interviews that people demand to see if it was going to be a little bit longer and run out of our format, things like that. So that's going to be the intent with one more rep. Now on to today's one more rep. What am I doing today? Well, today, like I said, people have been asking me left, right, and indifferent. Hey, Sully, you flash some pictures from your home gym. Love the home gym equipment. Could you tell me a little bit more about this piece or that piece? So I reached out to my friend Mark, who is basically the originator, owner, inventor, one-man band for Wide Body Bench. He's also a senior master sergeant in the Air Force. And for those of you who know my past, realize that I spent 42 years in the military, and the best 16 or 17 of that was in the Air Force. So the Air Force is near and dear to my heart. But what I loved about Wide Body Bench products is that they are so innovative and so versatile. And I kept trying to explain to people what they are and send them onto the website. And I just said, you know what? This is a perfect opportunity to do a one more rep interview with Mark, discuss where he came from, what it's all about, and drop some video footage on exactly what the capabilities are and where Wide Body Bench is going. So without any further ado, on to our episode. And thank you for joining me. All right, now time to speak to our guest. I am proud and happy to welcome a friend of mine, Mark Puzo, who is not just a United States Air Force member, as you all know, near and dear to my heart, but also manufactures the Wide Body Bench that I had featured previously. I've had a lot of people asking me about Wide Body Bench, about the capabilities, what I thought of it. And instead of rehashing that back on an episode of Natural Edge, I decided that I was going to bring Mark in for a full feature on one more rep. He is the engineer behind this. So Mark, enough of me talking. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your fitness industry, and what brought you to develop Wide Body Bench.
Yeah, so first, Sean, thank you so much. A lot of people, they don't know, but you are one of our first true and loyal customers. So I think I owe you a bunch just because, I remember the first time we talked and you ordered, our product from us, and then you sent us a couple patches, and then, we bonded over, our affiliation with the military and fitness. So, like I said, I owe a lot to you just because, from you being one of our first customers to our continued friendship. So, I just want to say thank you for that, and then thank you for bringing me on.
No, appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you.
Of course.
Jealous.
Yeah,
You're
me,
still
like I
serving.
said, I'm an active duty military member. I've been in 18 years, and currently I'm stationed and living in Montana. Yeah, so I'm happily married with 2 children. Fitness has been a huge part of our family lifestyle. I started lifting like many of your, many of your followers in your community at a young age, 18 years old, once I on my first deployment when I was in Afghanistan, and really from that point forward, I just haven't stopped. I'm about to be 38 here next month, so I've been lifting for about 20 years, and it's just been a huge part of my lifestyle. As far as the bench is concerned and where the idea came from, for a lot of my lifting time, I do a lot of power lifting, so a lot of compound exercises like your squats and your bench press, and a lot of floor press within there, that really has helped maximize my strength, especially in the bench. And on my deployment back in 2022 when I was in Africa, I started doing a lot more dumbbells. I started to kind of migrate away from barbell work, and I started to use a lot more dumbbells, and just because I just saw a lot more growth there. And during that deployment, I was doing a lot of heavy floor press, and during those exercises, and specifically, I always would have to go and get somebody because I was going up towards like the 140s, plus, and those are just not possible weights, or it's very hard for me anyway. I'm sure people can, but for me, it's very hard to get momentum and swing those weights onto your lap, from the floor. And so from there, after I'd constantly be bothering, people in the gym to help me out, I started to kind of go towards using plyo boxes on each side of the bench. And so I'd put a plyo box on each side of the bench, nice and flush with the bench. And then I would be able to use, pick them up regular in front of the bench, and get on the bench, and then use the plyo boxes as elbow support. Obviously, just from there and using those plyo boxes, it just kind of hit me. I said, hey, like it'd be kind of cool if, I just developed a bench like this so you didn't have to have the plyo boxes, you didn't have to have the setup time, and you could mimic floor press with heavy dumbbells without that unnecessary and inconvenient setup time. And that's just kind of where we went from there. Like it started with an idea and a napkin. I talked to my wife about it, and yeah, we just started kind of putting drawings together, talking to engineers to see if it was feasible, and then finally to manufacturers, who believed in what we were trying to do, and that's kind of what started the whole thing, and that's where we are today.
And I remember I initially got the wide body bench, even though I don't do a lot of floor presses. What attracted me to it was the pads, the original, before any of the attachments came out, and being able to maneuver those out and to like flare them out so that your arms have a good secure spot, get a good stop position. Mostly for me, I was thinking in the term of overhead presses because I've had a tendency to go too low on presses, create shoulder problems. This gives me a natural stopping point. But then when I started playing with it, I'm doing strict seated incline hammer curls. I'm doing preacher curls. It's like it was limitless. And then I saw attachments start coming out. So talk to me about how you got into the attachments and what do you have for attachments now?
Yeah, so if I can just kind of piggyback off what you said, so you're right. As far as the bench, like the original idea, the funny thing is the original idea of the bench was just fixed pads. That's all that it was. It wasn't pads that can change angles, lateral movement, vertical movement. They were just going to be, they were just going to be fixed pads on the side of the bench. My wife, actually, and I got to give her all the credit in the world, who's been a huge supporter of me throughout this whole thing. She's the one that said, hey, I think you're going to actually, be able to reach more people and make this, more formidable if you're able to actually make these pads move left and right or change angles. And to be honest with you, without that advice and without that feedback from her, like we wouldn't even have the attachments, because with that idea that she gave, and that feedback that she gave me, that's what came up with like the infrastructure to begin with, right? Like the spine, the pinion system. And so again, it was just going to be fixed, welded and fixed. And her idea with the spine and the pinion is what allowed for the flexibility, right? So the pads were first, no attachments in mind. The pads, thanks again to my wife for the lovely idea. But the pads were the only thing that we were going to go after. That was the only thing on our mind. We didn't think about attachment. But then there was a point in time that her and I were lifting together on the bench. And I said, we talked, and I said, Allie, I said, not only do we have the pads, but we have the infrastructure for additional add-ons. And that was based off just us recognizing that there's really not a true bench out there. We'll say a portable bench, FID bench, that can give you a commercial grade plate loaded experience. There's other benches out there that have attachments. Some of them are more, you have a lot of power, power towers, we'll call them, that are included with the bench, but not really anything that directly ties to the bench that makes it, that can make it a plate loaded series on a portable bench. And so that idea again, her and I talked about it, and I thought it was a great idea. I thought that why not offer a plate loaded option to people in such a small footprint for a fraction of the cost. And that's kind of where we ended up with the attachments. It really started out with an idea because of the infrastructure that the pads were on. Again, it was never supposed to be the main thing, but I think it ended up being close to the main thing with the regular bench because of her feedback. So yeah, currently you're right. We do now have attachments out there. So we have the chest press attachment that slides on each side, which can also double down as a shoulder press attachment. And for those who are in tune, they can manipulate it to be a back row attachment. It changes every
Mhm.
15 angles, and so really the only limit is your mind as to what you can do with it. You can do a lot of different things with just a chest press attachment. For the bicep attachment, same thing. The bicep attachment, which is the later of the attachments we created, can also, like you mentioned, could double down in so many different ways to include a back row. And then the chest fly attachment, which to be honest with you, is probably the attachment that we get most praise about because it most closely resembles a commercial grade attachment, chest fly attachment. There's a lot of attachments out there, for different benches, and the chest fly always seems to be a little wonky, right? Not as solid or stable as what you would find in a commercial gym for an incline attachment, incline chest fly. And I think this, again, we've gotten high praise. The incline chest fly attachment is the most resembled to a commercial grade piece of it.
And I have all of them. And initially, when I got the chest press arms, I was going to stop there. And I'm like, this is just something else I'm going to get. It's going to be like all the other equipment I've bought over the years because I've been a dedicated home gym trainer through most of my competitive bodybuilding career. And for the last 20 years, I've just preferred to train at home. And I have had every type of a gym you can imagine, from owning hammer strength pieces of equipment, and I had a big footprint. And then we moved down south. We don't have basements here. Every house is a slab house, and my gym now has to fit into a 2-car garage. I don't have the versatility. And I'm like, I'll try it out. I think I played with that thing nonstop. I think I was texting you and shooting you IMs like, hey, I just tried this, and then I did this, and then it was just so exciting because the ability to get the full range of motion and also the versatility. I could go from shoulder presses. I could do almost a vertical press. I could do an incline, a flat. It was unlimited, and I found that I used them almost every workout. The hand angle is perfect because some people like Smith machines. The problem with a Smith machine is your hands are always like this. They're not in a more natural position, where these are in that more natural position. A great press off, full ranges of motion. I mean, I fell in love with it. I use it every workout. I also like the fact that you seem to have the angle just right. Like the measurements are just right so that maybe it's my height, but I think it's pretty universal applied, that you're really getting the best force angles all the way up and down. You're keeping the tension on the muscle, and you're not in a linear movement, which, I mean, Smith machines, as much as people love them, you're still in a linear plane of movement that can cause other imbalances where you're not getting this. It's as close to a free weight arc as I've ever seen, and you can pile on the plates. I mean, the chest press was my favorite, but we'll talk about the fly in a minute. But is that
Yeah.
your best selling press?
What's that, sir?
Is that your best selling attachment, the press?
Yes, the press is that's definitely the best selling. And I understand, right? Like, I
Yeah.
understand, when people lift. Chest is obviously their favorite day, most people. And, it still is mine. Honestly, I, I love doing that exercise. But no, you're 100% right. Like we try to, we get questions sometimes about the arc and things like that because some people, they say, well, this isn't like, the most effective arc, not necessarily for them, but what they're used to. But we
Yeah.
built the arc and we built the press and we built all the attachments to really maximize the workout. For example, the arc, a natural bench press motion should go from front to back. It should have an
Hmm.
arc back. Like a true power lifter, anyone that power lifters, it shouldn't be a straight, from your nipple line to the
Exactly.
ceiling. It should be a natural. sometimes, and I understand that not everybody has different experiences, with lifting and expertise. And so that's some of the feedback. Like, so while you say you love that and you're spot on, like we built that for a reason, there's others who aren't used to that. And so, but yes, we closely try to mimic everything, the ergonomics of it to what the actual, the most optimized range of motion, and we just try to do that the best that we could. You know what I mean? Because again, there's there's a bunch of different ways to lift, and we understand that, but there are optimal ways to lift, and so we wanted to build our equipment to optimize the experience for people.
And it's also the variety of the training. In a small footprint now with that one bench and a power rack, you can do a barbell bench press, slide it a little bit forward, incline it, attach the arms. Now you got a lever press, take those off, and you can get a more complete workout. The next thing I got, they came both at the same time, was the arm curl and the fly.
Yes, sir.
I thought that those were going to be more single-use things, like a niche thing. Like, okay, I'm only going to use the arm attachment on arm day. But then I saw the video where you flipped them around. We're doing rows on them, and I found how, like, I use those now for shrugs, rows, curls, preacher curls. I mean, again, a lot of versatility in the movement. But the other thing I love about it is when you're adjusting your angle, again, the angle attack on the arm, it's putting the stress right onto the bicep. Again, it's like a well thought out process. And the way you constructed it, it doesn't matter where your leverage points are. Like if you have really, really long arms, you'll be able to use it because it's so adjustable. If you have really, really short arms like me at 5, worked just fine for me too. So that was another well thought out piece. But it's the fly that I want to get to next. That is kind of a niche thing. I'm sure if I really sit there and try to devise other ways to use it, I will. I use it every single workout because it is the single most perfect arc I've ever had. I've done, flies I was never really into as a competitive bodybuilder. I always went to cables and cable crossovers. But with the cable crossovers, you're always up and you're trying to, in the maneuver. This thing is right back down and then boom. And the arc, I mean, I love that thing, man. That to me is the best finisher for chest I've ever had. Have you found any other ways to utilize that particular piece? Because I know that, your wheels have always turned. You've got 15 different ways to use the lever arms. You've got 10 different ways to use the curl. Have you ever thought about anything else on that?
For that one in particular, that's not one that I've been able to, I haven't been able to figure out anything, different for that one. And I think, going into that one, I kind of, knew that it was going to be, what it was going to be, just because of how it was, how it was manufactured but again, like I said, I felt like that was missing, and it flies, for me, I love doing them even more now. I use, the fly attachment, and like you said, as a finisher, it's unbelievable. And especially, the good thing about all the attachments, like we've talked about, is if you even have the slightest clue of what you're doing, and most people who are buying our product, they do. Everyone's mostly in tune or they have some bit of experience. And even if they don't, you just have to slightly manipulate your body just a little bit, you know what I mean, here and there to maximize at different angles. And that's what's the best thing. A lot of other companies, they do it and they do a great job, and I'm not knocking them, but it's only kind of like meant and set for like a certain body type, or, for the home gym, we'll call it the home gym user, whatever that may look like. But this is for everybody. This is not only for the home gym user. We've had professional bodybuilders, we've had professional power lifters, we've had guys who are 3, 4, 500 pounds be able to fit in and use the attachments. And so the versatility, like you mentioned, are there. But if I do find another way to use the fly attachment, and maybe on the second version, the 2.0, there will be other ways because we've constructed it a little bit differently. I'll definitely be, the first one to let you know.
And that brings me to my final question. 2.0 stuff coming out. What is on the horizon for the entire line?
Yeah, so I think like we're mostly going to, we like what we've built. We like the base, the foundation that we built for the company. And like anything, and I was told from the beginning, like if you don't come out with the first model, you'll never come out with anything, right? There's a lot of people who just spend too much time on perfecting their first thing, and then in 10 years it never got released. So we spent time on the wide body bench, obviously. We spent time on the attachments, but obviously we knew there was going to be, hold on one second. I knew that there was going to be a second version. And so this next version, right, even as robust as the first version will be, we will make a 2.0 bench that will be even more robust. I say it's going to be the most stable in the fitness industry because we're going to have two dual steel supports that's going to be attached to a lever system. And so if you were to construct or think about a bench where you'd have two dual steel supports, you'd have to pull two pins, and then you'd have to figure out a way how to be able to hold the bench as it goes up and down. Here we've crafted a lever system at the top of the bench that you would depress, and then the latches, the two pins would move based on that depression of the lever. So that's why we're able to
Hmm.
introduce the two dual steel supports with the lever system. Not to mention the side pads are going to be able to do vertical and horizontal movements through a pull pin system rather than a take on, slip off. We're adding obviously new improvements to our attachments. And that's through the feedback of a lot of people. So we've decided to do on the chest press a converging chest press, right? I'm not a necessarily a huge fan on convergence because again, since the test of time, people have just been using barbell and their hands naturally just kind of stay in a straight path with no convergence. But I understand, why people would feel that way, especially for a chest press machine. There's nothing wrong with, getting that nice tight squeeze in the middle. So we added somewhat of a convergence to the chest press. We've also added some cool, unique adjustment features on the chest press. For the chest fly, we've really modify it so it will have an adjustable range of motion. The handles are more streamlined. We've made that a lot more streamlined of a product. Bicep attachment. So not only is it going to have a supinated grip, you're going to be able to turn the handle. So the handles will go from here to here if you want to do hammer curls. So we'll have
Oh,
swivel handles. Yep. And that was a lot of talk just through you and I. You and I have always had good conversations. So I might have to name those handles after you. But but the swivel handles are going to be a game changer there. And then honestly, the last product that we're going to have, which I think is honestly the biggest game changer, is the rack attach. As we've gone through
yeah.
this business, we've realized like not everybody, as much as we believe in our product, as much as we love our product and we think everybody should have one, not everybody needs a bench, right? Not everybody needs a big bench. Not everybody needs additional equipment. You know what I mean? So honestly, but not everybody wants to have a bench or needs a bench, and so we created a way for people to use the wide body bench attachments by connecting them right to their power rack. And so now they'll be able to get a plate loaded series, chest press, chest fly, bicep, and any future iterations by just using this connection piece. And the connection piece will slip onto a power rack, and then you'll be able to, play with the height of it where you want it for
Mhm.
your preference, and then just throw the chest press on there, the chest fly, the bicep, and so now you honestly have a commercial grade plate loaded series of equipment right there. The modularity is there, the values there, and we're really excited about that one. And
Yeah.
honestly, it looks like we're going to be able to start our pre-order here just in.
I want to be number one in the pre-order. I want that because my dream is to be able to attach that to my power rack. Now I can do my pressing movement. Then over on my wide body bench, I can have my fly handles and I can start doing supersets, bench fly supersets or whatever. Still, my gym footprint's not going to change. It's still going to be, a small 2-car garage gym with all the prerequisite cardio and all the other stuff. Um, are on this rack attachment, what are your sizes? 3x3, 2x2, 2x3? I mean, there's 10 different rack sizes. Who's included in this?
Yeah, we're going to try to, the we'll call them the foundational ones, which the 3x3 post with the 5/8 inch holes. We'll do a 3x3 post with a 1 inch hole. We'll do a 2x2 post with a 5/8 hole and a 2x2 post with a 1 inch hole. And we might add a couple more variations. It's not hard for us to do. And to be honest with you, that's the reason why we're doing the pre-order right to begin with, is because if you are able to let me know, let our company know, we're that small of a company. If you were to let me know what size your rack is, then I could have it produced to fit your rack. So if the options that we give you aren't aren't suffice and don't work for what you have, if you were to contact us through our email at ybodybench at gmail.com, we would be able to work with you to be able to produce one specifically for your rack. And so, but our standard sizes are like the ones I mentioned: the 3x3 with 5/8 hole and 1 inch hole, and then the 2x2 with the 5 inch hole and 1/8 hole. I'm sorry, the 1 inch hole. So we're gonna be able to try to accommodate as many people as we can for this pre-order. Obviously, as we manufacture and build up an inventory, we're only going to have certain on hand. That's why we highly encourage anybody who's interested now to reach out if they don't see their rack, because this is where we can make it specifically for what they have.
And you can also be found on Instagram at Wide Body Bench.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And what I can say, anybody listening to this, two things. The product innovation, incredible. Customer service, amazing. From the first time I reached out to Mark, it was, I think you emailed me back in like 10 minutes.
Yes, sir.
And here you are, a senior non-commissioned officer at a bustling base, running things, running a company at the same time, and you're still not keeping your customers waiting for very long. I mean, the kind of customer service, the dedication, and you're taking suggestions from the field. You don't shut anybody down. It's amazing. Hey, Mark, thank you for joining me. I know you got to get back out handling business out there. I want you to be safe. And any final comments before we let you go?
No, no, again, thank you very much, for our friendship and for inviting me on. I would be remiss if I didn't thank everybody who's helped us in the journey. And like you mentioned, the customer service is there because we realized that honestly, we couldn't do this without the people. My wife and I, we're just super grateful people. We're blessed to be here and for the people who have supported us, because honestly, they didn't have to. There's plenty of other companies that have plenty of great fitness equipment, and nobody has to take a shot on our company, right? Who are we? And so for people to believe, in what we're doing, even as such a small company, and that's why I try to get back to people as quickly as possible, because I am indebted truly to these people. Like if I can, just like 2 weeks ago, I went to Florida and I worked out at a place that's been one of our first customers and who had our bench, because I felt obligated, to meet them. Just like I feel obligated to stay in contact with you and continue to build a friendship, because without you guys spending your hard-earned money, I don't have this. This isn't a thing that my wife and I would continue to do. And for us, it's not about the money, but it's the ability to try to help others and give them something to help them reach their goals. And so that's all really that I want to say. We're super grateful for everybody who have helped us make this happen, to help make our dreams happen. And we just couldn't have done this without anybody, and we never forget that. And we will continue being a customer service oriented business. You'll always get first thing in the morning I'll wake up at 4 and I'll check all emails and respond at all types of times, and you're going to get our best and you're going to get our customer service, because we know what it's like to be on that other end and not get the answers that we're looking
So there you have it. If you're looking for any kind of home gym equipment, even if you have a small footprint, even if you train at a commercial gym and you want something for your weekends, holidays, etc., I got to recommend Wide Body Bench. The quality, the versatility, the customer service, and the price point. We didn't even talk about the price point. I know that you are not out to price gouge anybody, because for what you're charging, for what you get, you could be jacking that thing up even more, and you don't. So we appreciate you. And Mark, I look forward to us having a conversation in person one day, talking a little hockey, talking a little Air Force, try to get you out to an OCB bodybuilding event soon. So
for. Yes,
thank you
sir.
for joining us.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.